As a reminder, this session is being recorded and a copy of this meeting and the presentation will be posted on the project's webpage early next week. We ask you to invite your friends and neighbors who might be interested in the project to watch the video and fill out a comment form or send us an email if they have questions. The project team consists of consultants working collaboratively with the department and include Rod Nelson, who is the MDT District Administrator for the Billings District, Mike Taylor, MDT Billings District Pre-Construction Engineer, Mark Stute, MDT Consultant Project Engineer, Dustin Hirose, who is HDR's Project Manager. Next is our road design lead, Tessa Warmers, who works with Sanderson Stewart. Sanderson Stewart is HDR's teaming partner. Lastly is John Schick, HDR's environmental lead. You've already met me, Lisa Gray. I'll be your point of contact. Now I'm going to turn the meeting over to MDT's Mike Taylor.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Mike Taylor, and I'm the Billings District Pre-Construction Engineer for the Montana Department of Transportation. Public involvement is a vital component of MDT's project development process, so we're very appreciative of the opportunity for sharing information about this project with you. And in turn, we'd like to hear your questions, comments, and concerns. I'll give you a brief overview of the I90 Yellowstone River project, and then Dustin Hirose with HDR will be presenting the project design in more detail. The entire presentation should take about 30 minutes to complete, and then we'll open up to questions and comments. The project is led by MDT in cooperation with the Federal Highways Administration, Yellowstone County, and the City of Billings. The Montana Department of Transportation has contracted with HDR to be the lead project engineer, as well as the public information coordinator. The goal of the project is to meet safety and capacity needs on Interstate 90 in Billings. We plan on doing this by widening I90 from 2 lanes to 3 lanes in each direction between the North 27th interchange and the Lockwood interchange. We'll also need to reconstruct the bridges over the Yellowstone River and the Talon Energy Railroad Spur line. So with that, Dustin will speak to you about the project in more detail, but again, please don't hesitate to give us any questions, comments, or concerns that you may have. If you prefer, you can email the project team at any time after the meeting. The project contact information will be shown at the end of the presentation. So thank you again, and I'll turn it over to Dustin.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks, folks, for joining us on this presentation today. Just to recap the project location, because we do have a few projects out there, and to avoid confusion, our project, the I90 Yellowstone River segment, is located on I90, of course. It's within the city limits of Billings. And our project begins at the top of the 27th Street interchange, and then it heads north or in the eastbound direction over the Talon Energy Rail Spur, over the Yellowstone River, and then our project ends at the top of the Lockwood interchange. So technically speaking, our project begins at milepost 450.09, and it ends at milepost 452.73 for about 2.5 miles worth of work. So a little bit of history about the project. It really began back in 2012 upon the completion of the I90 corridor planning study. And that study looked at roughly 20 miles of interstate through the Billings area and how the interstate would be impacted by the anticipated growth in the area. And really the goal of that work was to identify needs along I90 that could address operational issues, possibly safety issues, and ultimately capacity needs that are associated with that growth in the area. So as a result of that study, there were multiple projects that had developed, and our project, the I90 Yellowstone River Bridge segment, is one of them. And so this section of interstate was originally built back in the 60s, and of course there's been some miscellaneous work since then, some miscellaneous pavement maintenance. There's been some guardrail updates on the bridges, for example. But it was last paved back in 2000, and certainly the infrastructure is aging and in need for improvements and upgrades. So since the planning study was completed, MDT had nominated this project for development, and the design began back in 2015, and that's kind of when our design team became involved. And as it stands now, we're actually at the very final stages of design. In fact, we're going to be submitting final plans and specifications in about a month, at the end of March, actually. And the plan is that we would go to construction in the fall of this year, so the fall of 2021, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. So a description of the work that we're going to do, in a nutshell, we're going to widen the interstate from 2 lanes to 3 lanes. So right now there's 2 lanes out there in each direction, and we're going to change that and add additional capacity by providing an additional lane. So there'll be 3 lanes in each direction when it's all said and done. And doing that work, we'll update the roadway to meet current design standards. We're replacing the bridges over the Talon Energy Rail Spur. And then one of the focal points of the project is to replace the bridges over the Yellowstone River. And in fact, that's a rendering of what those new bridges will look like off to the right-hand side of the slide there. Replacing those bridges is about half of the total project construction cost, which right now is coming in at about $60 million. Okay, so a little bit of detail about the Yellowstone River structures. Down on the bottom of the slide, there is a photo of the existing bridges. And those bridges are functionally obsolete, mainly due to inadequate roadway width. And there's really no practical way to reuse them or widen them to meet the current needs cost effectively. So really the only option here is to replace these structures. And in fact, we're going to do that with 2. There'll be a pair of bridges there that will be about 1,000 feet long. And it's important to note that we've gone through pretty extensive evaluation of different bridge options for this site. We've looked at multiple span configurations, different structure types, and of course, construction methods and cost. And what we've zeroed in on is a new 6-span structure such that the piers are located to minimize impacts to the river and really provide a balanced and cost-effective design. And just to clarify, when I say minimize impacts to the river, the configuration that we've chosen allows for conveyance of river flows, ice and debris, the types of things that you expect on the Yellowstone River. But it also provides a reduced footprint compared to the existing bridges, which minimizes impacts on the environment, of course. Another thing to point out is that the Jim Dutcher Trail, which currently runs under the bridges on the West Riverbank, that will be perpetuated with this project. We're actually going to reconstruct that and put it back, not quite in the exact same location. Another key item to note is that construction of these bridges will consume most of the construction schedule associated with any other improvements on the project. And when you consider the short construction seasons that we have in Montana, it's going to take 2 full construction seasons to build these bridges. So the plan would be build 1 bridge in 1 season and build the other new bridge in the following season. And our goal is to open the interstate up fully so that we have 2 lanes in each direction during the winter shutdown period. And so in order to do that, we have worked with MDT to incorporate means to accelerate construction. And we're going to do that by using precast deck panels. Compared to the traditional method of building a bridge deck, where you need to form it, you need to place rebar, and then you're going to pour concrete, and of course you need to allow the concrete to cure. The use of this precast deck panel design should significantly reduce the construction schedule and reduce the risk of construction extending into the winter season, because we really want to avoid having traffic maneuvering through crossovers or in a head-to-head configuration during that winter shutdown period. And this slide here is just kind of a snapshot that shows what these bridges will look like from the perspective of the driver. So again, you're going to have two independent structures that will provide 3 lanes in each direction. And of course, there'll be significantly more shoulder room there to meet the current design standards. Okay, the last pair of structures that we're going to replace are at the Talon Energy Rail Spur. And that photo on the slide there off to the right shows what's out there now. And again, there's really no practical way to preserve or widen these existing structures to accommodate that additional lane. A replacement is really the only practical option. But in this case, we're going to replace these structures with a precast buried concrete arch. And this arch structure allows us to upgrade the roadway to meet current design standards without having to extend the construction work, the roadway construction work, a significant distance on either side of those existing structures. So from the driver's perspective, you may not even really notice that there's a structure there now. It'll kind of feel and look like the roadway is just perpetuated over the railroad tracks. So technically speaking, we're correcting the roadway super elevation, which improves safety without the need to raise the elevation of the roadway through that area. And so with that, I'm going to pause and turn it over to Tessa, and she's going to tell you a little bit about the roadway design.
Great, thanks, Dustin. Hello, my name is Tessa Wormers. I work for Sanderson Stewart, and I am the road design lead on the project. The design speed along the interstate for the project design is 70 miles per hour. And the posted speed limit will remain at 65 miles per hour for all vehicles, including semi-trucks. The I90 roadway will be reconstructed and an auxiliary lane will be added in both the east and westbound directions, as Dustin mentioned earlier. The auxiliary lanes will be constructed from the 27th Street interchange to the Lockwood interchange. The widening for the extra lanes will occur to the inside of the existing driving lanes. This minimizes the need for new right-of-way, and in general, the design for the entire project stays within existing right-of-way. We will improve the safety of the road by flattening slopes and improving the bank of the roadway around the horizontal curves. We also provide barriers to separate and protect traffic. The pavement thickness is designed to accommodate the high volume of truck traffic along this section of the interstate. A new storm drain system will also be constructed to minimize ponding along the roadway. The concrete barrier will be built in the roadway median to provide separation between opposing directions of traffic and to reduce headlight glare. The on and off ramps on the east side of the 27th Street interchange and the ramps on the west side of the Lockwood interchange will be reconstructed with this project. A second exit lane and dual left-hand turn lanes will be constructed at the Lockwood interchange eastbound off ramp. The additional lanes better accommodate traffic demands and the high volume of semi-trucks at this location. A second exit lane will also be built at the 27th Street interchange westbound off ramp to accommodate traffic demands. This is one of the few areas along the project that will require new right-of-way acquisition for the construction of this second exit lane. I will now turn this over to John to discuss the environmental aspects of this project.
Thanks, Tessa. Hello, everyone. My name is John Schick. I work with HDR. I work for HDR, and I'm the environmental lead. And I wanted to speak to a few of the environmental considerations for the project. So the project is receiving federal funding, and that triggers a review under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. And similarly, it's receiving a smaller percentage of funding of state dollars, which then triggers a review under the state Montana Environmental Policy Act, or MEPA. The NEPA and MEPA compliance, it was accomplished through a categorical exclusion level of environmental document. This document and the environmental process in general looks at a broad range of resources and assesses the project's potential impacts to those resources. The categorical exclusion, it was completed in March 2019. One of the predominant natural resources in the project area is the Yellowstone River. Just the nature of the project and the replacement and construction of new bridge structures requires kind of a strict adherence to certain conditions and related to maintaining the quality of the river. This project will seek to minimize the impact on the river through use of environmental standard specifications and special provisions, which are essentially directives that will be given to the construction contractor to follow certain state and federal environmental regulations and procedures. The project is also, it's going to require state and federal environmental permits, that will further direct how the project is constructed to minimize impact on the river and water quality. Also within the project area, Colson Park is another important resource. Section 4F and 6F, these are important laws that are in place to protect recreational resources. And so this project is not permanently impacting the park and it's forbidden to without a detailed analysis by Section 4F, but the project will require temporary occupancy of the park to stage construction equipment and such. And so this needed specific coordination and concurrence with the City of Billings Parks and Recreation Department to agree to these temporary uses of the park and to meet the the project requirement to restore any disturbance that may occur due to the temporary occupancy. And finally, I wanted to touch on the noise study that was completed for the project. This project adds capacity to the highway through a new travel lane that was discussed previously. And so federal regulations require that a noise study is conducted to look at the effects of that. This involves taking measurements of existing noise levels in the project area, and it uses specialized software to predict future traffic noise based on future traffic volumes and the proposed highway configuration. So the noise model can identify locations where future noise in areas exceed certain thresholds established by the policy, the noise policy. And if necessary, it allows the designers to look at ways of mitigating or reducing those impacts. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dustin to continue on.
All right, thanks, John. Yeah, just regarding the project schedule and next steps, as I mentioned earlier, our plan is to begin construction this year, actually, in the fall of 2021. So again, the design is essentially complete. Final designs being submitted at the end of March, and then between then and the fall, the project will be packaged up and advertised for bidding. But this fall, we hope to begin the work by building some traffic crossovers and some irrigation crossings that go underneath the interstate to kind of set the stage for the main work that will be done in 2022 in that construction season. And so the first part of that work will include building the westbound facility. So we're going to build the westbound direction first, and that'll take most of 2022. And then the following season, 2023, we'll build the eastbound facility. And then ultimately, there'll still be a need for some cleanup, some final striping and signing and things like that that will need to occur in the final phase, which is in 2024. So during construction, we're going to be maintaining two-way traffic at all times. And then during the winter shutdown period, our goal is to open up the interstate again fully so that there's 4 total lanes and 2 in each direction, 2 lanes in each direction. We're currently looking at options to navigate oversized loads through the project area during construction. And then of course we have a plan for an emergency detour if for some reason there's an accident on the interstate or for whatever reason the interstate needs to close during construction. We have a contingency plan to manipulate traffic around that area. So with that, that concludes my part of the presentation, and I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa to make some concluding remarks. So thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Dustin, and a big thank you to all of our presenters. As previously mentioned, MDT will use public input from this online meeting as the project moves forward and will continue to work closely with the community and other stakeholders. And MDT will host other meetings to discuss project construction. We hope you will stay involved with us. Now we'd like to open the meeting to questions. Remember, in order to participate in the question and answer session, please locate the QA button on the bottom of your screen. Type in your question and click the blue send button. Thank you. And it appears as if we already have 3 questions. I will ask the question out loud and toss it over to one of our team members. They will unmute their mute button and answer the question. It is possible they may need you to clarify your question. If you hear your question and you hear someone ask for clarification, just type it up and send it to us, and we'll get to your question as it's been clarified. Okay, so the first question is a local hire question. Are you using Montana contractors with Montana employees? And I think I would like to toss that to Mike Taylor first. And Mike, if you'd like to take a shot at that question, if you want support from any of your team members, just let them know when you're finished.
Yeah, Lisa, thank you. Yeah, so the question is, are you using Montana contractors and Montana employees? So this delivery method is design, bid, build. So we will award the contract to the lowest responsive bidder. We don't exclude out-of-state contractors. And so it could very well go to Montana contractors. Just this, we don't select based on location of contractors. It's the lowest responsive bidder.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. And I would add that that our team is primarily in Montana. I, for example, live in Laurel and work in Billings. But I do have some redundancies built in. For example, for this meeting, I have support from our Boise office, just in case something happens with the system here. We want to have redundancy so we can continue the meeting. Okay, so thank you for that question. We sure appreciate it. The next question is, can the Dutcher Trail on the West Riverbank be widened enough to allow travel by an emergency vehicle, police or ambulance, to Colson Park? This is a critical life safety issue for development of the park. And I will give that question to Dustin.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. And actually, we do have the finished paved width of the trail right now is 10 feet. And there's an additional, I think, 2 feet on each side of shoulder width. So there should be plenty of width to allow access from an emergency vehicle.
Okay, thank you very much, Dustin. I appreciate that. Next question. I'm sorry, did you have something to add? I feel like I stepped on someone.
I just said you're welcome.
Oh, okay, well, there you go. The next question is, who will be the third-party inspectors on this project? And we'll ask Mike Taylor to answer that question.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, so project is designed by our consultant with HDR. It'll be awarded to the lowest responsive bidder, and the construction inspection, I'm assuming, is what you're referring to. That'll be done in-house with our MDT staff. This is pretty much how we do most of our project inspections. It's done by the staff we have locally here in Billings.
Thank you, Mike. And Vicki, if that was not your question specifically, would you type it in another way or clarify it? Thank you. Okay, the next question is, why was this section selected for widening versus other sections, such as between the West Billings interchange and Laurel? Is the traffic count higher for the 27th Street to Lockwood section? And we're going back to Mike for this question.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. So I believe you're right. That section of the interstate does have the highest traffic counts, but what really was driving this project was the need to replace the bridges over the Yellowstone River. So it's essentially a bridge replacement job. The existing structures were built in the 60s, so they're about 50 years old. So we can assume that these bridges will be in service for about the same time. So it makes sense to widen them at that point. So we widened them for the third lane in each direction and in between the two interchanges. Other segments of I90 in Billings will also be 3 lanes at some point. We have another project to the west to Johnson Lane that'll widen to 3 lanes in that direction. And then as we progress with projects in the future, eventually it'll be all the way through Billings. Another reason why we kind of cut it off between 27th and Lockwood is to try to keep the cost down to something that we can manage financially and be able to budget and a better project. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Dan, for the question. The next question is, do you know about how much additional construction costs are associated with ABC? Also, why wouldn't you keep the 2-way traffic on one side during the winter to demo the second bridge and expedite the overall completion? And I'm going to go to Dustin on that question.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we did look at the cost of ABC. Of course, we kind of, we look at traditional construction costs versus ABC anytime we want to implement it and make sure that does add value to the project. But I don't know what that number is. I'd have to look it up and get back to you. And there's other things that kind of come into play there, like what is the anticipated traffic user cost? That comes into play as well. But it certainly made sense here because of the added benefit of reducing that risk of having that work extend into the winter season, which kind of ties to the second part of that question. We really, if at all possible, want to avoid traffic in a head-to-head condition, in particular on the narrow 28-foot wide bridge deck on the existing structure. And so just from a safety standpoint, we're trying to get one of the bridges built in a single season. I will say, though, in the following season, when we have a little bit more room on the newly completed westbound bridge, there is that potential option of allowing work to extend through the winter, but that's not how we're proceeding currently at this point. But that is a possible option. Hopefully that answered the question.
Thank you, Dustin. Okay, the next question I have just clicked off on, so let me try this again. The next question is, why are there no pedestrian facilities on the project? It's been brought up and MDT has been aware of this community need for years. The bridge design is not for the future. It looks like the 1960s design. Pedestrian facilities must be included on this project. What are next steps to do that? And I do know that there were meetings between TrailNet and MDT on this exact issue. So I think first we'll go to Dustin to discuss the pedestrian facilities on the project. And if MDT would like to add anything after Dustin's done, we can do that.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a swing at that. I mean, we did way back when during the type, size, and location study of the project, part of the project where we look at different bridge alternates, we did look at the option to attach a separate pedestrian structure to the interstate bridge and looked at what impacts that might have on the project. And so that, I mean, could include, well, maybe we could attach something to the side of the structure or suspend something below the structure, or maybe we could build something in between those two structures. But the bottom line is that had a pretty significant cost impact to the interstate bridge itself. And then there were other implications that really would need to be fully vetted before something like that could even come into play. There are potentially right-of-way impacts with just trying to get the trail up to grade with the new structure, possibly floodplain impacts by filling in access to get up to the bridge. And, just in general, I think providing bikes and peds on an interstate facility normally isn't something that would be advocated, and would certainly have some hurdles and challenges to get past.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. And Wyatt, if this is a discussion you'd like us to go into more detail with you, why don't you send me an email, lisa.gray@hdrinc.com, and we'll set up something as soon as we can to have this discussion, go into more detail about this discussion. MDT, do you have anything to add? I think Dustin did a pretty good job with it.
No, I think Dustin did an excellent job answering that question. Thank you.
Okay, very good. The next question is, the bridges over the Yellowstone River have excellent potential to allow, to allow for bike ped access from Colson Park to Ford Dances. Will there be bike ped facilities construction? The issue was raised with MDT over 5 years ago. And I do have those notes. Dustin, did you have anything to add to this? Or Jeff, we can have this discussion again early next week if you guys would like to do that.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything I can really add other than what I've already said. Yep.
Okay, so we're happy to have this follow-up discussion. Again, I do understand that there were discussions with TrailNet with respect to this project specifically. Okay, how many, next question is, how many homes will be taken for this project? Dustin, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, there really are no well, there's some small right-of-way impact near the 27th, it would be the westbound 27th Street off-ramp. There's a small sliver of right-of-way that we're acquiring for the project, but other than that, all of the work is within existing right-of-way. So we're kind of maintaining the construction within the footprint that's out there now. I mean, there will be some temporary construction permits, right? I mean, that will need to go out in, just to accommodate construction of the project. But most of the work is all within the existing right-of-way.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. And would it be fair to say that a lot of the reason that can happen is because we're building the extra lanes toward the center of the existing existing project? Okay, the next question is another bicycle and ped infrastructure connection question. I think we've answered that. If we carry on with the discussion, Morgan will make sure that you can be part of that too. Next question is, I don't see any way for pedestrians or bicyclists to use the bridge. Is that true? If so, why? So again, we have a bike ped question, and I think Bill will make sure you get added to the list if that's a follow-up meeting that we can put together. I do know that there's some history to this. It's been asked, and we just need to make sure that we get you guys sort of some more details about that. The next question is, please confirm that no new right-of-way due to this project will serve to reduce the current size of Colson Park. Dustin, you want to take that?
Sure, yeah, there should be no reduction to Colson Park with the project.
Okay, thank you. Wyeth, I got your response. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Vicky, let's see, does using the lowest bidder guarantee the best job? And I think we'll go back to Mike with that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. A lot goes into this. So what makes a good job? Certainly subjective, but a lot of it's dependent on the design and the construction, and that's why we have our MDT inspectors there to ensure the project gets built in accordance with our contract, regardless of whether it's the lowest bidder or the highest bidder. They're all bidding to the same contract standards, and MDT's inspectors are there to make sure that that's what happened. So short of a guarantee, it is a tried and true bidding method.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. We have no more questions in the queue right now. We're going to wait a couple of minutes to make sure that we were able to answer all of your questions. I'll take the moment to thank everyone for participating. I know everybody's busy in these crazy times we're living, and the entire team very much appreciates your input and very much appreciates your sharing your questions and concerns about the project with us. We'll wait maybe 2 more minutes to see if any more questions come up. As a reminder, we have a website where you can go visit the project, and there are links in that website for sending us other questions and issues too. Or you can directly contact me at lisa.gray@hdrinc.com. And then the second website link that we put there is just, it's a great map where you can go and look at the active projects that MDT has going on. And in that same location, there's lots of other really cool information, interactive maps that you can take a look at. We're pretty close to closing it out, I think. I have no more questions coming up. Mike, did you have any final words you'd like to say?
No, I don't. Thank you, everyone, for participating, and hopefully we answered your questions. But again, if we didn't, please be sure and send them in. You got some contact information here on the screen that you can email those to us, and we'll do our best to get you an answer.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, well, we're going to close this down. Again, we appreciate all of you participating. We appreciate all of our presenters. If you have anything else after we close down and you say, oh, shoot, I forgot to ask, please contact us and we'll get your information. Have a lovely afternoon. Stay warm and have a great weekend. Thank you.